Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy Daily, the Hindu newspaper analysis. Right? So today we have a set of important news articles displayed here. These three news articles are important for the mains examination. Okay. So the first important news article is a new edge to the fight against tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a bacterial disease that infect lungs. However, in recent times, tuberculosis has emerged as a serious disease infecting a majority number of people. So, therefore, the government of India and India as a nation committed to eradicate or eliminate tuberculosis. Okay, so in this context, we will discuss all relevant aspects of tuberculosis. The next important news article is the olive branch effect of the Beijing Accord. See, continuously we have been discussing the Iran and Saudi Arabia peace deal mediated by China, right? So, in this context, how this accord actually change the regional alignments in the Middle Eastern region. So, we will also discuss this. And next important news article is the yesterday also we have discussed that UN Population Fund come up with a report. The report says India will overtake China in terms of population. India will have more than 30 million population more than China. So in this context, we will also look at this, how India can create economic opportunities for growing population, how India can effectively use its demographic dividend so that it could fuel our economic growth and economic development. So these three are very important news article for the mains examination. So we also have few articles. They are particularly relevant for the prelims exam. First article is Shanghai Cooperation Organization members meet. We already know that India this year will be a president of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So in this context, the emergency and the prevention meeting was held. So this meeting was chaired by Home Minister Amit Shah. So in this context, we will also discuss what is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, what are the members, and what are the India's commitments to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So next important article is government plans 100 eat right food streets across India. So this primarily aimed at promoting millets and preventing the non-communicable diseases such as obesity. The third article is SpaceX uncrewed Starship explodes shortly after liftoff. So SpaceX is world's largest space vehicle. Okay, so this is also very important in the context of Artemis 3 mission will be launched by NASA in the year 2025. The next important news article will be Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle C-55 mission, ISRO to carry out in-orbit scientific experiments using spent PS4. Okay, this will also we will try and understand along with the PSLV. We will also try to understand the difference between PSLV and the GSLV. Okay, so let's jump into the actual discussion. So the first editorial is all about a new edge to the fight against tuberculosis. Before actually discussing this news article, first try and understand what is tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease. It is caused by bacteria. Okay, this disease is caused by bacteria, and this disease transmits through air from one person with a TB through coughing, laugh, laughing, singing, or talking. Okay, so this disease transmits through a person from person. So primarily, it is a contagious disease, and TB mostly affects lungs. Okay, TB mostly affects lungs, can also affect any part of the body. So therefore, in this context, we'll try and understand what is exactly the severity of the TB disease and why it is important to eliminate or to eradicate TB disease, particularly in a low income country like India, where several people are vulnerable to the disease like TB. Because of TB, the productivity of individual reduces, and it also leads to high levels of mortality rate. And the other thing is that the bacteria has been developing antimicrobial resistance to various drugs which are used in the TB disease. So in this context, let's try and understand what is this disease actually. Recently, a World TB Summit was held in Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh. Okay, World TB Summit was held in Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh. So, in this summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi says it instill fresh energy to the global tuberculosis elimination response, and he also reiterated India's commitment to spearhead this effort. We know that we have a rich experience of COVID-19 pandemic, developing vaccines. We also have a network of labs for research and development, and also we also rightly known as the pharma hub of the world. Okay, the pharmaceutical hub of the world. So in this context, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi says or reiterates India's commitment to spearhead the effort of eliminating TB. So he also emphasizes on the importance of innovation, and there is a need to find new ways, especially to formulate new strategies. So those new strategies will help us eliminate the TB disease. The Prime Minister's remarks are very critical or very important. Why? Because it looks to redefine India's and world's TB elimination response, with innovation, research being the central drivers of change. Particularly, these comments by the or these remarks by the Prime Minister of India are very important to redefine India's and world's TB elimination response. TB is not just the problem in India, but it is a global problem. So therefore, the world has been looking to eliminate and eradicate TB. Okay, so with innovation and research, we could be able to eliminate TB in the near future, and we could be able to achieve our targets, especially the Sustainable Development Goals target number 3. SDG target number 3 talks about healthcare. Okay? So, healthcare. And what lessons we learned from COVID-19 pandemic? See, we have a rich experience of COVID-19 pandemic. We have developed vaccines. We also developed a number of protocols, guidelines like testing, treating, tracing the candidates. So, therefore, the pandemic has shown us that together we can overcome an unprecedented adversity. No doubt, pandemic is an unprecedented adversary, and together with everyone's contribution, we were able to overcome the adverse situation like COVID-19 pandemic. And if we could do it to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, and this also applies same to the tuberculosis also. In order to eliminate tuberculosis also, we come together and devise new strategies, new policies, new regulations that will help us eliminate tuberculosis completely. So, in this context, let's try and understand what are efforts on the part of India to eradicate or end TB. India first devised National TB Elimination Program. To understand, this National TB Elimination Program is also known as Revised National Tuberculosis Control Program. Okay. So this was earlier known as Revised National Tuberculosis Control Program, and this introduced several measures. The measures include to find, notify, treat TB cases. Okay, so when people are infected with TB bacteria, there is a need to detect those cases. When you're able to detect those cases, you prevent or reduce the spread of the disease to other people, because TB is primarily a contagious disease. So therefore, detection diagnosis and treatment of TB is very important. However, there are several novel approaches are also developed by India to end TB. Those novel approaches like engagement with the private sector. The government of India planned or framed a policy to engage with the private sector to end TB, and it has also launched social support provisions and introduction of diagnostic tools and new drugs for the elimination or the eradication of TB. So these are some of the measures which have been taken by the government to eliminate the disease of TB. And these measures also include improved TB management at different levels, whether it is at the district level or state level or at the national level. The TB management should be holistic, comprehensive, so that the TB eradication is possible. However, in India's fight against TB, there are certain challenges also. It is not free from the challenges. The challenges include the recent National TB Prevalence Survey says that this TB prevalence survey says that 64% of people with TB did not seek care. The 64% of total infected people with the TB, they did not seek care, right? So there are several reasons why people are not seeking care. Maybe it is because of lack of healthcare facilities, it is because of lack of support from the family, the financial problems on the part of the individual, or the symptoms, the disease has not been showing symptoms. Okay, even if the disease not showing the symptoms, there is a probability that the disease will spread from one individual to the other individual. Okay, so since 64 percentage of people did not seek care under TB treatment, then that would be a particularly a problem. This is one challenge. The other challenges include lack of widespread awareness about the disease. In rural areas, there are several people who are infected with the tuberculosis disease, but they lack awareness whether it is caused by the TB bacteria, or whether what are the implications once a particular individual is he or she infected with the TB disease. And they also lack access to quality care. In rural areas, as usual, the primary healthcare centers or health and wellness centers are not adequately equipped with the diagnostic, treatment, and drug facilities. So, this is also a one challenge in overall India's fight against TB. However, in order to address these challenges, India need to follow a set of measures. So there are a wide variety of challenges, no doubt, but in order to tackle those challenges, in order to address those challenges, we need to take multiple measures. So those measures include there is a need for transformative change in our TB response efforts. Okay. How we are actually perceiving TB is very important to bring in a transformative change in TB treatment. Okay, that will be the game changer in overall TB care. And we should be able to introduce disruptive approaches and new tools to change the way we prevent or diagnose treat TB disease. Disruptive approaches, the approaches should include research and development, and they also include data, statistics, facts about the disease, the tuberculosis disease, and that will help us prevent, diagnose, and treat TB disease successfully. And it also says that the Mission COVID Suraksha program earlier, in order to tackle COVID-19 pandemic, the government introduced Mission COVID Suraksha program. So this program, with the aim and objective of developing vaccines, so the main aim of the program was developing vaccines for COVID-19 pandemic. So this was a very good example of public-private partnership. In the same way, TB also should be dealt through public-private partnership, because the dividends or the yields of public-private partnership should be taken to treat the TB disease. And Mission COVID Suraksha program is a best example of developing vaccines. Okay, so there should be a clear goals and outcomes also in order to treat this disease, in order to eliminate this disease in a very time bound manner. However, if you look at India's overall healthcare architecture, there are certain inherent capabilities for India. There are certain inherent capabilities for India to deal with this disease. So those inherent capabilities are a huge number of diagnostic tests which were developed, and a variety of different vaccine platforms. No doubt, for example, the Bharat Biotech or Serum Institute of India, there are a wide variety of different vaccine platforms, and they have all the capability to develop a different or wide variety of vaccines for various disease. And we also have a large scale capability in diagnostic test development. So therefore, they are some of the inherent capabilities which India have. They show that the manufacturing sector is robust and can scale rapidly. So whenever uh, whenever it is required, then our manufacturing sector is ready to respond to provide vaccines at any scale or produce the diagnostic test kits also at any scale. Okay, so this will be rightly leveraged and used for treating or eliminating TB disease as well. So along with this, there is a need to strengthen and expand research and development. For any disease, research and development plays very important and a very crucial role. With the research and development, we will be able to understand how the disease has been responding to the drugs which are given to patients, whether the disease or the bacteria have been developing resistance or not, whether vaccines are potent or not. That could be easily understood through strengthened research and development. So therefore there is a need to strengthen and expand research and development efforts for TB. So and also develop new tools that will help India meet the and TB targets. India have TB targets. India target to eliminate TB by the year 2030. In order to achieve this set target, we need to devise all these strategies, follow all these policies and frameworks so that we could be able to successfully eliminate the TB disease. Along with this, there are few other aspects or the few other measures which we could take to further eliminate or further prevent the TB disease. First thing is we need to prioritize TB vaccine trials. Every one of us know that what a vaccine trial is. Vaccine trial is primarily used to understand or to know the potency of the vaccine or any other shortcomings or side effects of the vaccine once it is administered. Okay, so therefore we need to prioritize TB vaccine trials. For any infectious disease, vaccine is what makes elimination possible. So there are wide variety of infectious diseases. If we administer vaccine for those diseases, that leads to the elimination of the particular disease. So therefore, in the case of TB also, vaccine plays a very important and a very crucial role. In fact, for TB disease, there is a vaccine called Bacillus calmette-guerin vaccine. Okay, so this vaccine was already developed for treating TB patients. However, the major shortcoming of the Bacillus calmette-guerin vaccine is it does not adequately protect the adolescents who are about 12 years of age. Okay, who are 12 years of age. It does not adequately protect the adolescents and adults also, who are at the highest risk of developing or spreading TB disease, not children or not with people with morbidities. Rather, it is inefficient or ineffective for adolescents and adults. So, therefore, this is a lacuna on the part of Bacillus calmette Gurion vaccine. Therefore, it is important for India to prioritize vaccine trials. It is said that in India, over a 50 TB vaccine candidates are in pipeline. That does mean that in India, 15 TB vaccines are in the phase of testing or in the phase of clinical trials. So, therefore, we must ensure that those clinical trials are prioritized to assess their efficacy in various community settings and different target groups. This is that the clinical trials which are undergoing for TB vaccine should be prioritized in a community setting. It should be tested across different communities. For example, it is about adults, it is on adolescent, it is on children or old age people or people with comorbidities. In different setting, in different community setting, those vaccines need to be tested and proved their efficacy. This will also help India develop vaccines as effectively as possible, as in the case of the COVID-19 pandemic. Along with these measures, there could be other measures which also taken to end or prevent the TB disease. One is testing for and diagnosing TB. It should be made more affordable and accessible for the people. The major reason why people not seeking medical care is because high or expensive treatment of TB, and even diagnosis testing is also very expensive. So therefore, the focus should be on making it more accessible and affordable. And the next measure is new innovations such as nasal tongue swab based tests. So those tests are less expensive and they are very easy to know whether a particular individual is infected with the TB disease or not. So therefore, there should be a need for new inventions on nasal and tongue swab based tests for TB. Along with the above discussed measures, there is a handheld digital X-ray machine. So this handheld digital X-ray machine, this is fitted with the artificial intelligence based software. So that mission can be taken to the villages and urban settlements, and that will also help screen people at a large number and also understand people who are at the high risk. Okay, so this could be conducted in a safe and convenient manner. So what are the appropriate policy frameworks which needs to be taken? Not just innovation, research and development, prioritizing the vaccine or clinical trials are essential or required, but along with those measures, a policy framework, regulatory framework is also very important from the government side. So what are the appropriate policy frameworks? Strengthening innovation ecosystem involves creating a regulatory and policy framework. Okay, this involves regulatory and policy framework, and this framework smoothens the rollout of existing tools, and it will also help reach out to the people in maximum numbers. Along with that, there is a need for greater collaboration. Greater collaboration, not just in terms of policy or not just between policymakers, scientists, product developers, clinical researchers, but across the country or between the governments, between the state government or the center government or the intergovernmental cooperation. Indian government cooperating with the any other government in, for example, countries in the global south or countries in the Western Europe. So therefore, there is a need for collaboration and cooperation between the governments is also very important to identify the seriousness of the disease and also eliminate this disease successfully. During COVID-19 pandemic, India got the title that is pharmacy of the world. Right? India got the title pharmacy of the world with its G20 presidency. India is currently holds the G20 presidency. India has another historical opportunity. So this historical opportunity should be rightly leveraged to build a global health architecture, and that creates equitable access for all, equitable access of drugs, diagnostic treatment for all the people, mostly the low and middle income countries in the global south. So therefore, India should take up the lead. India, now a G20 president, now holds a G20 presidency. So therefore, this provides another historical opportunity for India. So this is all this article is all about. Okay, so let's discuss the next news article. We all know that recent times, Iran and Saudi Arabia have normalized ties with each other, mediated by China. So this earlier they have a severed ties. They severed ties with each other, and the Middle East is also home for proxy wars between different countries. Proxy wars between different countries. So therefore, a new deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia completely changes these geostrategic position or geostrategic rivalries in the Middle Eastern region. Now, first, try and understand the Middle Eastern location. You can clearly see the countries which are part of Middle East. Saudi Arabia, it is located here. Iraq, Kuwait, Iran. This is Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Oman, Yemen. So all these countries are part of the Middle East. Okay, so all these countries are part of Middle East. So in this context, the author says that the olive branch effect of the Beijing Accord, what influence or the effect the Beijing Accord have on the overall region, what is the role of USA in this accord, how China and Russia have been increasing their influence in the Middle Eastern region has been discussed in this article. Okay, so in recent times, we have been seeing an aggressive realignments in the West Asian region. This is also called as Middle East. Okay, there have been aggressive realignments. So this is evident from few things. Firstly, understand the foreign ministers of Iran and Saudi Arabia have met in Beijing, and they also discuss details about opening up embassies in each other countries. Earlier they do not have embassies in each other's countries. Okay, so they have discussed opening embassies, operating direct flights, and facilitating issue of visas from people of one country to the another country. So they have discussed all these aspects, and also the officials of both the countries have already gone to the respective capitals. Riyadh, Iran officials have gone to Riyadh, and Saudi Arabia's officials have gone to Tehran. Okay, so this is part of reopening their diplomatic and consular missions that have been shuttered over last 7 years. So these diplomatic and consular missions have been shuttered over the last 7 years. Now they have resumed the diplomacy and diplomatic uh, events between these two countries. So, what will be the influence of the peace accord or the peacing accord between the relations between Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Syria? Because they are also part of the Middle Eastern region. Earlier, all these countries are either divided or polarized, so they are not united, and they also have huge internal conflicts or the rivalries between each other. Okay, so that also makes this region a less integrated region. However, the Beijing Accord have the potential to integrate this region. So first aspect of this is truce in Yemen. We all know that in Yemen there has been a severe humanitarian crisis has been taking place, and there is no democratically elected government. Yemen is also prone to the civil war. Yemen is also prone to civil war. So therefore, in this context, in Yemen, the capital of Yemen is Sana'a. There is a militant group. Okay, there is a militant group. The group name is Houthis. Houthis are generally rivals to Saudi Arabia. Houthis are rivals to Saudi Arabia. Generally, Iran provide arms and ammunition to Houthis. Earlier, both Saudi Arabia, Iran have tense ties, or they are rivals. They were rivals. Okay, so since they were rivals, earlier Iran used to provide arms and ammunition to Houthis, and Houthis used to attack the Saudi Arabian establishment. Since there is a peace accord between Saudi Arabia and Iran, how this will change the Houthi Saudi Arabia relationships in the region? In this context, let's try and understand. Yemen is the first test case whether the Iran Saudi Arabia agreement, Iran Saudi Arabia accord is resilient enough or not. This will decide, the Yemen Houthis will decide whether the Saudi Arabia Iran peace accord is resilient. Because since, see, if Houthis attack Saudi Arabia establishment even after this peace accord, and Iran continue to support Houthis, then there is a probability that this peace accord will not sustain. This peace accord will not sustain. So therefore, Yemen is the first test case for the resilience of Saudi-Iran accord. And Saudi also wanted to exit from their costly Yemen misadventure, because of the problem with the Houthis, Saudi Arabia has made an adventure into Yemen so that Houthis will not pose any threat to Saudi Arabia. Now, with this peace accord, Saudi Arabia is looking to exit from their costly Yemen misadventure. However, along with the Iran, Houthis will play a crucial role. Houthis will play a crucial role whether there will be a peace in the region or not, whether they wanted to normalize the relations with Saudi Arabia, whether they wanted to come forward for a possible ceasefire with the Saudi Arabian government will depend on Houthis. What will be the situation in Syria? Because earlier these countries have also tense ties with Syria, because Syria is a country which is also affected by civil war. Bashar al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, he is the president of Syria. However, he derives support from Iran, and Russia. Generally, the Middle Eastern countries or the Gulf Cooperation Council countries maintain severed tense ties with Syria. But with this agreement, there is a possible realignment. There will be a possibility that Syria will normalize or improve its ties with Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and other Gulf Cooperation Council member countries. This has been particularly happened in the backdrop of this recent peace accord, and also we know that both Turkey and Syria have been heavily impacted by the earthquake. In recent time, a major earthquake. There was a major earthquake in Syria and Turkey. Okay, so after this earthquake, these countries have resumed their diplomatic engagement with Syria. In this context, this accord has brought together the two countries that had been opposite sides in the Syrian conflict. What are the two countries? Saudi Arabia plus Iran. Earlier, both of them have opposite views over Syrian conflict. Both of them have opposite views over the Syrian conflict. Now this peace accord brought together both Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now how this will change its relationship with Syria is remained to be seen. Recently, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad paid a visit to United Arab Emirates. Earlier, they don't have better or good relationship with these Gulf Cooperation Council countries. But recently, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad visited UAE. In fact, Bashar al-Assad was welcomed to UAE, saying that it's time for Syria to return Arab fold. So this was said by UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. So he said that it's time for Syria to return Arab fold. We have already discussed that the Middle Eastern region was more, uh, you know, a polarized region or a divided region. So therefore, there is also expectation that the Syria will come into the Arab fold again. However, all these shifts have been signaling an emerging regional order within the Middle Eastern region. It is important to understand whether all these shifts have been indicating an emerging regional order. It is said that this is all a hectic diplomatic interactions and US has been sidelined in all these hectic diplomatic interactions or realignments. Traditionally, US had to play a major role in any major realignment in the Middle Eastern region. Now, US now China and Russia have taken the role of US in the Middle East. They are playing major role in the realignments within the region. However, the US has been sidelined in these major realignments, and US has just become a disgruntled observer in the region. Okay, so this clearly shows that the region has shrugged off US yoke. The region has come out of the US influence, US yoke, and it has been taking foreign policy decisions. It has been taking foreign policy decisions, particularly keeping in mind their national interest. Okay, so they particularly keeping in mind their national interest and they're coming out of the US influence. We understood everything about this. First, now understand the situation of Saudi Arabia and how this peace accord will transform its relationship with Russia, China, and US. They are major powers in the region. In fact, Saudi Arabia recently became a dialogue partner of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Shanghai Cooperation Organization uh, is an organization where major economies like India, Russia, China are part of. So therefore, recently Saudi Arabia has become a dialogue partner of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. In fact, Saudi Arabia has also shown interest to be part of the BRICS grouping, the major grouping of Global South. So Saudi Arabia has also shown interest to be part of the BRICS grouping. And since it wanted to improve its relationship or relations with Russia and China, the other side of it is it's still it will continue to buy weapons from US because US is a major defense supplier for Saudi Arabia. So therefore it will still continue to purchase weapons from US and also diversify its weapon supplies. It will not just depend on USA for its defense supplies, but it will diversify. It will depend on countries like China and Russia for its major defense suppliers. Because recently it has bought a ballistic missile from China and also purchased a Chinese technology which is used to manufacture its own missiles. So therefore, this has been indicating that it wanted to diversify the military procurement to the wider countries. So apart from this, Saudi Arabia and Russia remain solid partners. There is a OPEC grouping. Every one of you, I think, know about this OPEC grouping. So OPEC grouping is a group of major oil producing countries. They collectively take decisions whether to increase the oil production or to cut down the oil production. So in this context, both Saudi Arabia and Russia are also part of the OPEC plus grouping. The Saudi Arabia has been engaging with US, China, and Russia simultaneously. Now, what would be the position of Iran? We have discussed the position of Saudi Arabia. Now, let's try and understand the position of Iran, how it wanted to improve its relations in the region. Because Iran is already a substantial defense, energy, and economic partner with Russia and China. Okay, because China is a major uh, uh, for China, Iran is a major source of hydrocarbons. So therefore it has developed a substantial defense, energy, economic, and logistical connectivity with these three with these countries. Along with this, three countries, Iran, Russia, China, they also carried out another joint naval exercise. They very frequently go for joint maritime exercises that was held in March. So, along with this, Iran has a central place in the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative of China, Iran has a central role. Along with that, there is an international north-south transport corridor. In this corridor also, this is linking Russia with India. So in this corridor also, Iran is used to play a central role. So therefore, Iran has also trying to diversify its relationship with other countries and also strengthening its relationship, its ties with China and Russia. They are the regional powers. However, this implies overall scenario and realignments implies a presage of two scenarios. So this implies two scenarios. The first scenario is the West Asian, that is a Middle East cooperative order. Now each country wanted to build strong ties with each other. So this is called as a cooperative order. So this cooperative order founded on diplomatic engagements among the regional states. Okay, so the now they have been resuming their diplomatic engagements, and this will in turn be part of the larger order embracing Eurasia and Indian Ocean. So they wanted to embrace the Eurasian region that includes Europe and Asian region and the Indian Ocean region, and that is defined by the multipolarity, not a unipolarity or the bipolarity, but multipolarity, and it also encourages regional states to pursue their own interest, their goals through a diverse interactions and alignments. So there will be a diverse interactions and alignments. We have discussed how Saudi Arabia is planned to align with different powers with China, Russia, and USA. So therefore, there will be a diverse interactions and alignments of countries in the Middle Eastern region. However, it is said that China will be the center of this diplomatic activity. No doubt, China is an emerging and a growing power, and China will have a central role in this overall diplomatic activity. See, this article is also very important for the mains paper 2 perspective. Okay, paper 2 perspective, international relations. You have to understand this context of this peace accord in Middle East and how this will shape India and Middle Eastern relationship. Okay, so this is all about this article. So the next important news article is uh, number game. Recently, United Nations Population Fund come up with a report. The report says that India will overtake China as the most populous country by mid of 2023 with more than 30 million people more than China. Okay, 30 million people more than China. So this article says that with the growing population, India should create economic opportunities so that the existing demographic dividend the existing demographic dividend could be rightly used for economic growth and development. So overall working age population of total population is 68%. This is a demographic dividend. Okay, so the working India have a huge working age population at a time when countries like Japan, USA, and other Western European countries, including China, have been observing aging population. Okay, aging population. So therefore, India will be a global bright spot for economic growth and economic development. So therefore, skilling and skill development of our youth or demographic dividend will make the existing population, or will help us use the demographic dividend in a more sustainable way. Okay, so according to this estimate, India's population in the year 2022 is 142.86 crore. Okay, so what is the working age population? 15 years to 64 years is considered as population in the working age group. Now let's try and understand. So what this article has specifically discussed. The article says that the recent World Population Report. This report says that India will become the most populous country by the mid of 2023. By this year, mid, India will become the most populous country, surpassing China's 142.5 crore population. Okay, so about 3 million, not 30 million, I'm sorry, it is 3 million more people than China's. However, India has had a vacillating relationship with size of its population. Okay, so why India has a troubled relationship with size of its population? Because after independence in socialist era, particularly when the governments following the socialist policies, population is generally considered as a burden on the country, right? So this says that this is a convenient excuse to explain India's poverty and state's inability to improve the standard of living of people. Because we have a very high population, we are unable to prevent or control poverty, or we are not able to improve the standard of living of people. With these reasons, the state has gone for several sterilization programs, forceful sterilization programs. Okay, so forceful sterilization programs were not successful. They were not successful, and they led to the compromising of dignity and freedom of individual. Okay, forced sterilization programs, family planning programs in India led to the compromising of dignity and freedom of individual. However, after India opened up its economy during after globalization, 1991 globalization, the scenario has been changed. Earlier, population has considered as a burden or as a liability, but now after globalization, population is considered as an advantage or an asset, because it is a vast and untapped market. It provides an opportunity for vast and untapped market with fortunes at the bottom of the pyramid. So bottom of the pyramid means, so at the bottom level there is a huge population. Okay, so there will be a fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, and it is considered after globalization. It is generally considered that population is an advantage. Okay, population is an advantage. However, India's large working age population, we have discussed that 68 percentage working age population, 15 to 64 years. India has a large working age population and demographic dividend also. It is relative to the several developed countries, that includes China also. However, China followed a one child policy. China followed one child policy due to the population explosion in China. China wanted to control the population and it followed the one China policy. So therefore the fertility rate in China is around 1.2. So this has been leading to a a drastic decline in population in China, and now China has been facing the threat or the problem of aging population also. However, in this context, we know that India has a huge demographic dividend or the working age population. But in order to create employment opportunities for such working age population, there is a need for skilled workforce, because skilled workforce is considered as the power. I mean, the workforce that drives the economy, economic growth, and economic development. However, it says that despite overtaking China, India's population growth is also slowing down. It says that India's total fertility rate comes down to around 2.1 percentage. So this is almost equal to the replacement levels of population. So therefore, it is generally says that India's population growth is also slowing down. This is evident from the data provided by National Family Health Survey Report 2021. So this report says that the total fertility rate had for the first time dipped to 2.1 percentage. So 2.1, that is very near to the total replacement rate. What is the population forecast of India? The population forecast of India says that the current 1.4 billion population will increase to 1.6 billion by the year 2050. So India's total population will become 1.6 billion by the year 2020, because India now reached to the replacement levels of 2.1 fertility rate. So along with that, before India will finally settle at 1.53 billion in the year 2100. Okay, so by 2100, India's total population will stabilize at 1.53 billion. So this is a UN estimate. We understood everything about the UN Population Fund report overtaking India overtaking China. So first, try and understand the fertility rate also. What is a fertility rate? Fertility rate is the average number of babies born to a woman during their reproductive years. Women have a reproductive years in her life, so therefore, average number of babies she give birth to, so that is a fertility rate. Now, an average number of babies a woman can give birth to is 2.1 percentage, 2.1 baby. Okay, so this will also gradually reduce once economy starts to progress. Once economy starts to progress and education levels also improves among women, this will start to reduce. What is a replacement level fertility rate? So replacement level fertility says that the average number of children a couple must have to replace themselves. Okay, replacement level says that there are two couple. Okay, if they have two children, and that is replacement level. That is replacement level. But if they have four children, that is not the replacement level. If they reach to two children for them, this is called as a replacement level fertility rate. So this is all about this news article. So the next very important news article, very frequently asked in prelims also, the PSLV and GSLV. Now this news article says that PSLV C-55 mission. PSLV is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle C-55 mission. ISRO to carry out in orbit scientific experiments using spent PS4. So see, technicals are not very important, but you have to understand what is PSLV and what is GSLV. So first understand what is this recent launch. Indian Space Research Organization scheduled to launch Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. This is PSLV C-55. So and this launch will take place on April 22, and this will carry out an in-orbit scientific experiments. Within the orbit, it will carry out scientific experiments by using already spent fourth and final stage PSLV. Okay, that will be used as an orbital platform and will conduct experiments within the orbit. Okay, so this PSLV C-55 mission is a dedicated commercial mission. So this is a commercial mission, dedicated commercial mission, and PSLV C-55 is sending Helios to a satellite. So this satellite belong to Singapore. Okay, this satellite belong to Singapore. Now, first try and understand Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle and Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. See, first, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle have 4 stages. Okay, this will have 4 stages, and the total liftoff mass of this vehicle is 320 tons. So overall liftoff mass of PSLV is 320 tons. And first flight of PSLV was conducted in the year 1993. So PSLV delivers Earth observation satellites and remote sensing satellites. So lower weight satellites with a lower weight, they are carried to the low Earth orbit, either low Earth orbit or medium Earth. So okay, so the primary goal of PSLV is to it delivers Earth observation satellite and remote sensing satellites up to 1,750 kilograms. And sun synchronous, it also reached to the sun synchronous polar orbits, but uh, with a lower weight of satellites. It can reach up to the sun synchronous polar orbits as well. However, the remote sensing satellites have applications like mining, forestry, okay, fishery. So this is a remote sensing satellite, and the remote sensing satellites orbit the Earth from one pole to other pole. So this is Earth, and remote sensing satellites move from one orbit or one pole to other pole. PSLV is a four-staged rocket vehicle with first stage and third stage using solid rocket. Okay, in the first stage and the third stage, PSLV uses solid fuel. Okay, solid rocket motors, and in the second and fourth stages, they use liquid rocket engines. So this is all about PSLV. And now let's understand GSLV. So GSLV liftoff mass is 414 tons. Okay, overall liftoff mass, and it has a 3 stages. So PSLV have 4 stages and GSLV have 3 stages. So the first flight of GSLV was in 2001. Now PSLV delivers Earth observation satellites. On the other hand, GSLV delivers communication satellites in the elliptical orbit. Okay, the elliptical orbit looks like this, and GSLV delivers communication satellites into the elliptical orbits and geosynchronous satellite orbits. However, satellites uh, sent through GSLV, it seems like they are permanently appeared or remain permanently fixed in the same position in the sky. So, okay, so they are just permanent, they just look like a permanently fixed in a particular position in the sky. So therefore there is no need to track those satellites and will be used for communication. Okay, so this is a three-stage vehicle. First stage using solid motor, second stage using liquid fuel, and third stage using cryogenic engine. India already developed indigenous cryogenic engine. Okay, so this will have a 3 stages. First stage is solid, second stage is liquid, and the third stage using cryogenic engines. Okay, so the next important news article is SpaceX unscrewed Starship explodes shortly after the liftoff. Okay, the SpaceX is the largest or the most powerful rocket ever built by mankind. Okay, this is the most powerful uh, rocket. This is developed by a private company, SpaceX. Okay, SpaceX of Elon Musk. However, yesterday it was tested. Yesterday it was tested, and in the mid course it was exploded. But however, it is uncrewed. There was no crew in the vehicle. Okay, in this Starship. So it says that the rocket has been designed. The primary objective of the rocket is to send astronauts to both Moon and Mars. Since it is the most powerful rocket, the NASA has given the responsibility of sending astronauts to Moon and Mars to the SpaceX Starship. Okay, the Starship will take astronauts to Moon and Mars. However, despite the failure uh, to complete its overall 19-minute flight, and reach the orbit of the Earth, the SpaceX declared it as a success. Despite its explosion, the SpaceX declared it as a success. Okay, so in this context, let's try and understand briefly what is a Starship. Starship is a spacecraft. Okay, so you can see here, Starship is a spacecraft, and that will carry. Now it is not carrying crew, but eventually carry crew and cargo that will scheduled to separate from the first stage rocket. So actually, this is scheduled to separate from the first stage rocket boosters. So when it is launched, after 3 minutes, it's just exploded or failed. Okay, so it fall in the Gulf of Mexico. However, it is said that the NASA has picked Starship spacecraft to ferry astronauts to Moon in the year 2025 as part of Artemis 3 mission. Okay, so Artemis 3 mission send astronauts to Moon, and NASA selects Starship to ferry astronauts to Moon. Okay, so the first time uh, NASA sent astronauts to Moon in its flagship Apollo program. Okay, so after Apollo program, the Starlink or the Starship will take astronauts to Moon. Now, in this context, let's understand what is Artemis mission. Okay, so NASA's Artemis mission is the next generation lunar exploration. Lunar exploration is exploration of moon. Okay, it is next generation lunar exploration, and it is named after the twin sister of Apollo from Greek mythology. So this is named after Apollo's twin sister. Artemis is Apollo's twin sister from Greek mythology. It is a first in a series of increasingly complex missions the NASA will undertake. This is first of the series of complex missions that will enable human exploration of Moon and Mars as well. With Artemis program, NASA aims to land humans on Moon by the year 2024. By the year 2024, NASA will send humans to Moon. So NASA will establish Artemis Base Camp on the surface of the Moon. Or Artemis Base Camp will be set up on the surface of the Moon uh, in the lunar orbit to aid exploration by robots and astronauts. Okay, so this is all about the Artemis mission and also the Starship. You have to remember the Artemis mission and also the Starship because there is a high probability that they will be asked in the examination. So the next important news article is Shanghai Cooperation Organization members must pool resources, expertise on disaster resilience. Okay, so this is said by our Home Minister, uh, Amit Shah. Okay, actually, he chaired a meeting on prevention and elimination of emergency situations. Okay. So, Shanghai Cooperation Organization member countries prevention and elimination of emergency situation that includes disasters. Okay, that mostly include disasters, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, landslides, or all types of disasters will be covered under prevention and elimination of emergency decisions. So first understand who are the member countries of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The member countries include China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India and Pakistan. Please understand India and Pakistan became members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the year 2017. Earlier we have discussed in the Beijing Accord that Saudi Arabia now become uh, an observer of this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. See, you can see the member countries Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, Mongolia. Now, Saudi Arabia has also become a member country, an observer country in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, total member countries in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are 8 countries. Totally, 8 countries are part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, in this context, let's try and understand what our Home Minister Amit Shah has said. So, he said that the countries, Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries, should adopt a collective approach for disaster resilience. So, disaster resilience is even if a disaster struck down, the countries should minimize the infrastructure losses or economic losses and loss of lives. Loss of lives. It is a probability that due to increasing climate change, there will be an increasing intensity of these disasters, both natural disasters and anthropogenic disasters. So therefore, these countries should develop a collective approach to disaster resilience. How they can develop a disaster resilience? By pooling in resources, expertise, and avoiding the duplication of efforts. If they if they are taking efforts to achieve the disaster resilience, those efforts should not be a duplication efforts. Okay, so they should take the rights and correct efforts, because please remember, India assumed presidency of Shanghai Cooperation Organization this year. Okay, 2022, India assumed the presidency of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We already discussed the member countries of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Total 8 countries are part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Some of the data related to Shanghai Cooperation Organization is it has a 40%, it contributes to 40% of global population, because Russia, China, India are major economies and most populous countries. Russia is not most populous country, but China and India are most populous countries, and they are part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And it contributes 25% of global GDP and 22% of world's total land area. Okay, so please remember these statistics. So this data, this will help you in your mains examination. So India-led coalition, India already launched a coalition called Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Okay, so this coalition is launched by India to develop disaster resilient infrastructure. We already know that India is also a most vulnerable and disaster prone country. India is vulnerable to cyclones, earthquakes, drought, floods, all types of disasters. So therefore, India has launched the climate, disaster resilient infrastructure fund with the like-minded countries. As of now, 39 countries are part of the coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure. India already developed the tsunami early warning system. Okay, so India already developed tsunami early warning system in Indian Ocean rim countries. Okay, so we already know that this is all the Indian Ocean. In the Indian Ocean region, India developed early warning system, so that this will benefit, the early warning system will benefit uh, 2 dozen other countries in the Indian Ocean region. So uh, if there is any probability of tsunami, if India forecasts the tsunami early, then the adequate measures could be taken. Okay, India is traditionally give more efforts to humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the Indian Ocean region. So therefore, India has started this tsunami early warning system for Indian Ocean rim countries. So along with that, India has also organized two kinds of a knowledge sharing workshops for SCO members on impacts of earthquakes and floods. We already know that India is vulnerable to floods and earthquakes. So India is already vulnerable to floods and earthquakes. So in this context, India has organized knowledge sharing workshops for SCO members on mitigating floods and reducing the impact of earthquakes. So recent SCO meeting identified 5 priority areas. Okay, so 5 priority areas. Just remember these 5 priority areas. The priority areas include uh, confidence building efforts in Asia, collective responsibility approach, expanding cooperation in communication and information sharing, identification of priority areas, use of new developed technology in disaster resilience, and capacity building are some of the major areas identified by the recent uh, Shanghai Cooperation Organization elimination and prevention of emergency meeting. Okay, so this is all about this article. So the other article, this is also very important and relevant article, right? So government plans to set up 100 eat right food streets. Okay, so 100 eat right food streets will set up, one in each district. Okay, one in each district. The government will provide uh, the government will provide 1 crore rupees for each eat right food street in each district. Okay, so this is planned with the help the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare plus Ministry of Urban Development. Okay, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, they have asked the states to and union territories to develop 100 food streets in 100 districts across the country. Okay, the primary focus of the food streets is to promote uh, eat right campaign. Okay, eat right campaign, promote millets or sustainable foods, and also reduce the non-communicable diseases, emanating from these foods. For example, obesity, right? Obesity is a non-communicable diseases. Heart related problems is also a non-communicable diseases. So the focus of this program, Eat Right Food Streets in each district, will help make India more healthy. Okay, so this particularly focuses on the aim of this project is to encourage safe and healthy practices to reduce foodborne illnesses and also improve the overall health outcomes as per the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So this is all about the articles which are very important both for the prelims and mains perspective. Okay, so thank you.